Hey everyone! I've got another Echoes of Wisdom challenge for you today, and it's going to answer the game's ultimate question. Can you beat the game without going into Swordfighter form and never summoning the same Echo twice? Okay, we know we need 5 ancient orbs, and we must go into Swordfighter form to destroy a few barriers, but we'll minimize these exceptions and never use Swordfighter to gain jump height or damage an enemy. This will use the fewest summons challenge as its base, but it's so much more, needing to dig deep into the catalog of echoes at every turn. This is going to be a test of creativity, skill, and patience. Get your sand crab ready, and let's dig in. The table is gone right off the bat. We proceed past the guards and build a table pot crate tower to escape the castle. Next, the Hyrule Castle pot is used, and then the bed. This is a neat trick discovered by Gunpowder 77, where there is a narrow window of time to grab the crate on the ascending bed. You can now bring the crate with you and use it to smash one of the upcoming crates, allowing you to save yourself from using the boulder. Note that although I will show many tricks used to minimize non-battle summons, I will not explain them in great detail, as I have already done that in my fewest summons video, which you can find a link to in the description below. Drowning monsters is a great way to get their echoes without having to summon your own to defeat them. In Southern Ruins Dungeon, we used stacked pots here and then summon our own pot, the non-Hyrule Castle variant, to reach the battle with Link. The Spear Moblin gets his time in the spotlight during Phase 1, and then I go with a rock during Phase 2. Even though I mess up and Link destroys my rock, there are enough pots in the room to finish off the battle. Here's the first Swordfighter exception where we must destroy a purple barrier. At the boss of the dungeon, I would use Rope during the first phase, followed by Zol in the second phase. These guys are weak, but get the job done. It's quite easy to keep your echoes safe in this battle, something that won't remain true in all future battles. With the map opened up, I would spend some time collecting more echoes, with drowning and throwing rocks being my primary means to kill the monsters. In Stilled Upper Zora River, I got some added challenge from Swordfighter being off limits. Without being able to increase my jump height, I had to use an Octorok for a couple height boosts. Inside the cave, I'd be drowning the Dark Tektite to free its friend of Tries, then summoning the Bombfish to blow away this block. Next came the battle with Jabu Jabu, and despite being only an early game mini-boss, this battle gave me absolute fits, wasting several hours of my time. It made me seriously question if I still wanted to take on this challenge at all. I used the Sea Urchin for Phase 1, hitting Jabu Jabu with it as he swims around. You've got to be careful though. If you don't hit him just right, he'll cause the thing to despawn, ending your attempt. The Octoroks are also pesky, so I'd take some of them out if I had time to do it safely. One hit from one of the rocks, and your echo is gone. In Phase 2, I'd summon my own Octorok. You want to set up your Octorok to land as many hits as possible, while making sure you stay a safe distance from any other Octoroks. Varying your depth in the water is another good strategy for dodging their attacks. Part of what makes this battle a grind is both the Sea Urchin and the Octorok are very weak echoes. But at this point in the game, there wasn't much else available for underwater echoes, and I also had to be mindful enough to save something decent for the upcoming dungeon's boss. At some point during this phase, grab the Beery Echo floating on the water. Things get even crazier when the Albatrolls start spawning. Now you need to get underwater and stay there the whole time until the birds get swallowed back up. If you're at the right depth, you can still hit Jabu Jabu while being out of reach of the Albatrolls. After a 22-minute long attempt, I finally delivered the finishing blow to Jabu Jabu and moved on, with my enthusiasm for the challenge in dangerous territory. I'd climb up the still Jabul waters on my first try, using stacked pots, repositioning many dark monsters, and executing many reverse bonds to clear all sorts of gaps. Inside Jabul Ruins Dungeon, I'd soon encounter a room that I had previously used the Swordfighter jump height boost to clear. This time, I'd create a stack of 3 crates in the water and reposition them so I could use them to reach the far side of the room. Once over here, I'd work with a needlefly to reach the wooden walkway. In the next room, I'd summon my Sword Moblin to take out some sand crabs. The problem with the Sword Moblin is he likes to move around, and he actually commits suicide at the same moment he takes out the final sand crab. Here I'd activate each of the switches either with a sea urchin or by using a spin move. Like most monsters, Tektites can drown as well, making this a pretty easy battle. I knew that after this dungeon, there wasn't much left that would require underwater echoes, so I essentially traded my Tangler for a Tangler level 2, and then after a quick detour to grab a beetle, I traded my beetle for a Chompfin. Feeling powerful for a change, I used the limited utility Meat Echo to take a shortcut up to the boss and get things underway. I used Tangler level 2 first, which made pretty quick work of the boss's first phase. I followed this up with Chompfin for phase 2, and I could hardly believe how quickly the boss was dead. What a relief this was after the Jabu Jabu battle. In Gerudo Desert, I would use the Oasis to drown monsters, even the dark ones that are necessary to defeat. I was happy to discover I could get the Whole Mill Echo just by dropping a giant boulder on it. I'd use Whole Mill and Brazier to clear Ancestor's Cave of Rest. Soon I'd be stuck in still desert temple ruins, not able to access this upper ledge without Swordfighter. What I eventually discovered is there are small ledges on the right-hand side of the tree that you can use to ascend it. From here, there were 4 more Friends of Tri that I needed to collect. I'd get Dark Keys to spawn from the floating dark blob, and then I'd use some manipulation and reverse bonding to get where I needed to go. In this cave, I'd summon the Wind Cannon to take out the sand piles. Why the Wind Cannon? Because it doesn't have much utility otherwise. But since the Wind Cannon cannot fly, and you can't pull it up a ladder, I had to use a few tricks to maneuver it around the room and take out the sand piles. After getting a small height boost from a Keese, I was faced with a double Mothula battle. Seeing the sand, I decided to summon my Sand Piranha, as there likely wouldn't be many more opportunities to use this echo. Turns out, the Poe can be damaged from its own fire. Easy enough. Outdoors, we use a treasure chest, then enlist help from Tornado, as well as Mothula, to reach the Hawk statue. Next is the battle with Link. Phase 1 was easy enough. I used a Tektite while binding with Link. Sometimes my Echo would die, but more often than not, I would get to Phase 2. Phase 2 was quite tricky, with 3 Links all shooting at you. I used my newly acquired Poe Echo and tried to pull each of the Links into the fire before the Echo died. Eventually, I got lucky and managed to clear the battle. Next up is Swordfighter form exception number 2, followed by a reverse bond with a beetle to bridge a long gap. And after summoning our Hawk statue and Elephant statue, we arrive at the boss of Gerudo Sanctum. I was stuck on this battle for a while. I used Pathblade during phase 1. Although weak, this did get in a lot of hits quickly by moving back and forth rapidly. I was sure to save 2 of the room statues for phase 2, where I summoned a Peahat. Even after having the boss hit both statues, you'll still need to inflict more damage, and the Peahat can potentially be useful for reaching the boss in the air. One of the more frustrating parts of this battle is that your Echo will immediately despawn if a sand pile starts to form in the same spot. Moving on, I headed to Elden Volcano, using Gyro to help me get there, while acquiring its Echo. The point of this trip was to acquire the Fire Octo Echo, which I will put to use shortly. Without Swordfighter, I needed help from a Dark Keese to get into the Hyrule Castle Rift, then summoned a Trampoline to get back into my jail cell. Beery was the hero of the Darknuts battle. Most Echoes cannot go up or down ladders, meaning I would have needed 2, but Beery can float between levels. Now it was time to summon my Fire Octo to light these 4 torches, with this final one requiring a very precise angle to clip its right-hand edge. Coming up was an underwater section with purple barriers, but you can find a route that avoids them. No Swordfighter needed here. Next, I entered a fight with 2 Darknuts and the Ball and Chain Trooper. This was a test of my rock throwing skills, which apparently were up to the job. I grabbed the frog rank, then got to work in another absolutely miserable battle. Ganon has 4 phases, meaning I needed 4 different Echoes. I started off with the Club Borblin, then moved on to the Club Borblin level 2. Again, I felt the tension between saving my best Echoes for later, but at the same time, not making this battle unnecessarily difficult. Third up was Darknut, and although this phase was perhaps the easiest, I still had to hit Ganon 19 times, meaning there was plenty of time to make a mistake. For phase 4, I brought out my Darknut level 2, and this is where things got really brutal. Ganon now rapidly alternates between all his attacks. The main difficulty is he can despawn your Echo by appearing in the same spot. I tried to keep my Echo exactly in the middle of the room, but I wasn't always able to get there in time. All in all, it took over 4 hours of grinding to defeat Ganon. In Stilled Goron City, I used a couple boosts from Zero to reach a friend of Try's, and then had to summon my own Zero to blast away several layers of blocks. In the Lizalfos Burrow, I had some difficulty in this battle with 2 level 2 Lizalfos. I first tried to take them down with a sand crab, but would always fail, and so I eventually settled on using a boomerang Borblin to take them out. After that, I was off to Eldin Temple using an assist from Akis, then summoning Gyro to fly across the next room. I carried a couple of lava rocks through Stilled Eldin Volcano to bridge this final section, and then I was inside. After grabbing the first small key, I had to summon a lava rock to traverse this room. I used a torch slug to activate this switch, and right afterwards had to reverse bond another torch slug to make my way up to the second small key. It only took a little while for me to realize that you can kill Link without an Echo, just by dropping boulders on his head. My next Swordfighter exceptions would follow immediately after, to destroy a couple sets of bomb blocks on my way to battle the Fire Wizrobe. Here I'd make use of the Sand Crab, simply jumping into the Wizrobe with it whenever it gave me an opening. Now for another Swordfighter exception, to destroy a purple barrier, and then a set of blocks hiding another small key. I'd now leave Eldin Temple so I could acquire Strangula to skip the upcoming set of bomb blocks. I used a couple crates in Eastern Temple to get the Spark Echo, then set out for Faron Temple, where I knew I could get the Strangula Echo for free. I used rocks and fire to get more echoes in the Faron wetlands, then entered Stilled Blossu's house. Since I can't use bombs to blow away spiderwebs, I lit a grilled fish on fire, burned one spiderweb with it, then threw it downwards to ignite the grass, and burned the other spiderweb as well. I took care of the dark giant Goponga flower by pulling it into the abyss, then had another Swordfighter exception to blow away some blocks inside the cave. I escaped Deku Scrub Jail, then summoned Caromadillo to take out a couple of dark spiders. I was able to get them to spawn on top of each other, so it's like you're only fighting one. I used Spark to light the switch, and then reached Faron Temple and my coveted Strangula Echo. While I was here, I decided to finish the temple. Although I surely could have used Genie to activate the switch, monster echoes are at a premium, and so instead, I summoned 4 of my lowest utility echoes onto the scale. It took several minutes, but for round 1 with the mini-boss, I summoned Aruroda and had it repeatedly attack from close range, basically stun-locking the boss. To my disappointment, there were no fire sources outside the temple, so I needed to summon the Torch Slug to burn the spiderweb. Inside, I'd go with the Crow for this battle, first taking out the baby Goma, and then patiently working on the electric Wizrobe, being careful to stay off the spiderwebs where I might get hit. Next, I'd summon a wooden box and use it to transport fire to this spiderweb. In the next dark room, I summoned an electric Keese to activate the switches. After clearing this dual switch puzzle echo-free, I had come to the room that uses perhaps my favorite solution, summoning a beetle mound that will spawn 3 beetles, enough to weigh down the scale, leaving the mound for you to reverse bond with the overhead Armos. If you're high enough and all the beetles are on the scale at the right time, the Armos will pull you up to the required height and you're going to be home free. Now for round 2 with the mini-boss. I went with the Ball and Chain Trooper, despite being fearful of using a valuable echo. Because the blue heads can't be damaged straight on, I needed to stretch them out and have an echo attack their pink spot, but most echoes don't seem to target this spot. With the Ball and Chain Trooper, his wild swinging and large attack radius meant that the pink spots would get hit inadvertently if nothing else. And then I was in the battle with Goma, and I chose Spear Moblin level 2 for the first phase. After clearing the spider eggs, we'd run from the eye laser, being just fast enough to stay ahead of it. Next, I had to pick the Moblin up and stand in just the right spot. If I did, he might actually target Goma's eye, causing her to fall where more damage can be inflicted. After a couple rounds of this, I was off to phase 2, where I summoned the Buzzblob. The procedure this time was to take out the eggs, then hit 2 of Goma's electricity points while she is still on the wall. Run from the laser, then stand in the right spot so you instantly activate the third electricity point as Goma comes off the wall. Now you put the buzz blob on her eye, and after doing about 10 rounds of this, Goma will be no more. Alright, time to return to Alden Temple. In the boss key room, I kept a fire keys by my side and used it to bridge the gap when making my escape. Here is my use of the Strangula Echo, to avoid blowing away some bomb blocks. And then I'm in the long lava-filled room leading to the boss. This is a convoluted one, but you make your way across by reverse bonding with pots as they raise in lava geysers. In the middle of the room, stack the 2 pots in a lava geyser, hop in, go for a ride, and then leap out onto the higher platform. From here, a fire octo can take you the rest of the way, again by reverse bonding with it while it gets pushed up by a lava geyser. If you're a bit short, see if the fire octo will attack, giving you a final height boost. Now we're at Volvagia, and our echo of choice is the giant Goponga flower. This battle is actually quite easy. Just make sure to keep your flower off to the side, and wait while it repeatedly inflicts damage to the boss. With 1 temple left, we grab a 0 from Elden Volcano and use it to ascend to the lower section of Hebra Mountain, allowing us to skip some bomb blocks along the normal route. I'd use fire to obtain the super valuable Sword Moblin level 3 Echo, and then would be taking the secret entrance from above to visit Conde at work. Next up is a great trick figured out by To Pig Likes Bacon and DD. This will save summoning a fire echo, of which we have very few to spare in this challenge. Head into the adjacent room and get to work building a 2 ice block tall enclosure around the torch. Now, pull the Sword Moblin out of its hiding spot and work it into the enclosure, where it will be trapped. Return to the door, and from there, jump onto the ice blocks. As long as you stay off the ground, the door will be your last safe spot used for respawning. Maneuver the Moblin right beside the torch, and when it looks like he is still, jump for the gap right between him and the torch. If done right, you'll light on fire, get stuck, then respawn right beside the door. Here, walk back into Conde's room, and you'll have just enough time to melt the icicle, if you don't spin. In Stilled Hebra Mountain Cave, we'll make use of an ice keys, not once, but twice. The second time, it brings us to a torch, which we can use to melt out the 3 remaining Friends of Tri. Higher up the mountain, we can acquire the Ice Wizrobe Echo by drowning it. A short while later, as we continue climbing through caves, we'll reach a couple of battles, neither of which require echoes. Just get ice blocks up high enough and use the drop on your head technique. After performing a treasure chest swing move discovered by DD, we continue to cross Stilled Hebra Mountain. We clear 3 more gaps by patiently working with Gyro, then use a freeze slug to pull us upwards, bridging our final gap. We get to work in Lanayru Temple, and since bombs are off limit, we'll summon Kralchula to clear the big gaps in this room. This will work in a 2-phase approach. Clear the first gap, then pull Kralchula down off the wall, and get back into position. When the time is right, put Kralchula down and go for another ride, all the way to the door. After performing some acrobatics to position this orb correctly, we reach perhaps the easiest battle in the game, where all we have to do is hold each Temper Tweelus in front of an ice jet. Now for the mini-boss, and I won't lie, I was absolutely dreading this. I wasn't sure if I could clear this under the challenge parameters I set out. I started the battle with a Freezard and Wolfos combo, which stayed within my 5 triangle limit. Problem was, after the first blob divides, I could never keep both my echoes alive for very long, no matter what I tried. I knew to have a chance, I would need a clever approach, as using pure skill and reaction time wasn't going to work for me. Here's what I came up with. When both blobs are busy spitting, summon an Ice Octo in the corner, then protect it with a snake statue and overhanging boulder. The boulder will block any falling rocks. This setup leaves an opening for the Ice Octo to shoot and hit the blobs, if you position them along the wall. If I'm not mistaken, the Ice Octo is the only echo that can both freeze the blobs and also damage them when frozen. It is weak though, so this takes a long time. Just don't stand near your statue or octo, because a falling blob will destroy them. When one of the blobs finally self-divides, things get a little hectic, because the now smaller blobs can squeeze past the snake statue and kill your octo, so you need to keep them away. If you've been alternating which blob you damage, the remaining big blob should also self-divide soon. Now you've got 4 smaller blobs. You need to get them all to move away from your creation, then sneak in there and seal it off with the cat statue. Phew, Your Ice Octo is safe. Pull the snake statue over slightly to create a small opening, big enough for the Octo to shoot out of, but not big enough for a blob to enter. Pull the Octo over to line up with your opening, then bring the boulder down so you can stand on top of your statues, triumphantly watching your measly Ice Octo slowly take out the most dreadful boss in the game. Just to be safe, work the boulder over so that it's blocking the spray path from the pool. Other than occasionally using Bind to ease my worries of a blob somehow squeezing through, there is nothing to do but wait. All in all, this battle takes about 25 minutes. Note that I didn't need to use Freezerd and Wolfos. I could have used Ice Octo for the first blob as well. I did this simply to speed things up, as I knew at this point I had echoes to spare. Let's all give some applause to the Ice Octo, the MVP of the entire challenge. Hey, if you're enjoying this challenge, please be sure to like and subscribe. It'll really help the channel out. In the next room, after borrowing a fire keys, we'll summon Ignizel to light one out-of-reach torch. Shortly after this, we summon an ice block to satisfy this dual switch puzzle. And then we have the White Wolfos battle. Knowing I had echoes to spare, I went with the heavy artillery, Sword Moblin level 3. I summoned my own fire keys for the next torch, then found myself facing off with Scorchill. Phase 1 saw me summon the Fire Wizrobe. Easy enough to keep it out of harm's way by carrying it around the room. For Phase 2, I was thankful to still have my Ice Wizrobe. It was a little harder to keep this echo safe, but with some good breaks, my Wizrobe would advance us to Phase 3. And here I summoned Tempertweelus. A surprise to me, fire does not damage Tempertweelus, but it does make it angry and allow it to inflict fire damage, which will make quick work of Scorchill if he is wearing the ice helmet. After a thorough thrashing, Scorchill was defeated, using the minimum of 3 echoes. Next, we lure the Lynel out of Eternal Forest and convince it to commit suicide. Then we summon our 5 Ancient Orbs, which is the only multiple summon exception in the playthrough. In Stilled Ancient Ruins, we first reverse bond with a Peahat, and then with a Dark Beery to clear the first 2 gaps. After that, we ascend this beautifully constructed ice staircase all the way to the battle with Zelda's Echo. Okay, for Phase 1, we summon our Lynel. Since Zelda is floating, you do need to help the Lynel out by giving it some height boosts, but when it makes contact, it quickly advances things to Phase 2. In this phase, I summoned the Electric Wizrobe. Frustratingly, the Wizrobe often does not aim at Zelda, but at the very least, it seems to always be high enough in the air that the monsters cannot attack it. So after some patience, we reach Phase 3, where I summon Mothula level 2. This echo will finish off the battle pretty quickly, but it will sometimes get distracted by the monsters below, and it'll help if you can pull it away to keep it from being killed. After delivering the final blow to Zelda's Echo, we're now inside Null's body, where as per usual, we let Link do all the fighting. I summon a Needlefly for this switch, then let Link take out the monsters on my side of the room as well. We now ascend up to the final boss, where in Phase 2, I summon a Hydrazol, which nearly dies, as the final echo used in this challenge. And there you have it! Echoes of Wisdom beaten using Swordfighter form as little as possible, using 77 echoes, all of them unique. There were still some great echoes left on the table, and if I were to redo this challenge, I could surely make it a little easier on myself. What do you think? Would you have made any different echo choices? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and as always, please like and subscribe so you don't miss what I have coming next. Bye for now.